Augustus Lander meets with Captain Hitchcock and Superintendent Thayer from the United States Military Academy. Thayer explains a second-year cadet named Fry offed himself. However, his heart was carved out mysteriously. Augustus visits the coroner and learns that the person who carved the heart must be a man of strength and skill, as he wanted to preserve the heart. Thayer later explains to Augustus that there are powerful senators in Washington that plan to shut them down for this incident. Augustus is tasked with saving the honor of the Academy. Later, Augustus learned from a cadet that Fry's feet were strangely touching the ground. Augustus later reveals he thinks Fry was executed. Judging from the evidence of a struggle in Fry's neck and fingernails, Augustus pries Fry's hand open and finds a note. Later, Hitchcock sets some ground rules for Augustus, prohibiting him from drinking throughout the investigation. While investigating the scene, Cadet Edgar Allan Poe approaches Augustus. He tells him that the man he's looking for is a poet. Augustus continues with the investigation and discovers a man pretending to be an officer had relieved one of the guards on duty during the night of the incident. The man was wearing a uniform without flags. Afterward, he goes to a bar and drinks with his friend, Benny. Patsy points to Edgar, drinking alone. So Augustus approaches him. Augustus wonders why Edgar thinks the culprit is a poet. So he explains that the heart is a symbol. Edgar tells Augustus to look through a cadet named Loughborough, Fry's former roommate with whom he had a falling out. The following day, Loughborough explains to Augustus that Fry fell in with a bad bunch of cadets, causing the two to diverge in paths. Stoddard, the last to see Fry alive, explains that Fry told him in passing that he had necessary business. Stoddard doesn't know what it means, thus leaving another dead end for the investigation. Suddenly, a report arrives, citing a cow and sheep brutally offed with their hearts carved out in Cold Spring. Consequently, Hitchcock tightens the restrictions on the cadets. Later, Augustus secretly employs the help of Edgar in deciphering the segment of a larger note found in Fry's hand. In the evening, Augustus grieves for the death of his wife, still fresh in his memory. Suddenly, Edgar knocks and tells him the message is decoded. The letter Fry held is an invitation citing the phrase, "Don't be late. Come soon." Augustus deduces that it's "Don't be late. Come see me. I'll be at the cove by the landing." However, it doesn't make sense for Fry to meet a fellow cadet, so Edgar thinks it's a woman he's meeting. Edgar also realizes Augustus knew the answer but just wanted confirmation. He says that after Fry's death, he awoke and suddenly felt like writing about a mysterious woman. Just as he was in the mess hall, he saw a beautiful woman walk by. According to Edgar, his late mother of 20 years dictated the poem to him. Later, Augustus says out his doubts about Edgar to Patsy. However, Patsy tells him that the ones they've lost are always with them. The following day, Augustus investigates the medical demonstration room. He remembers Dr. Marquis telling him that Fry's heart may likely be wrapped in muslin and surrounded by ice. Augustus asks Edgar to meet him at the ice house, Lake Courage. In the ice house, Augustus finds a circle and a triangle rendering some type of ceremony. He tells Edgar that Fry's heart was likely placed in the middle. They seek the help of Jean Pepe, an occult expert. Jean explains the symbol is a magic circle related to a formidable witch hunter named Leclerc. According to Jean, Leclerc's missing books are highly sought after because they have instructions on achieving immortality. Poe reads from Lancre's book that the contents of a witch's Sabbath feast include the hearts of hanged men. Later, Augustus tasks Edgar to discreetly infiltrate the cadets to know which ones are connected to the occult. Edgar pretends to have vertigo and presents Marquis' prescription to Lieutenant Locke and Marquis' son, Optimus, the cadet commandeer. Locke reads that Edgar was diagnosed with a grand ennui seizure. Optimus smiles at Locke's confusion, not knowing that it means boredom. Impressed by Edgar's brazenness, Optimus invites him to the 18 North Barracks at 11 p.m. Later, Edgar goes to Augustus' house and is in awe at the detective's collection of books. Edgar sees that Augustus has a book from Byron and sifts through it. However, Augustus stops him, saying the book belongs to his daughter, who recently ran off with someone. Edgar backs off and eventually tells Augustus he plans to infiltrate Optimus' beer group. Later, Edgar impresses Optimus' friends. As they play cards, the conversation steers into Fry's death. Ballinger accuses Optimus that his sister got with Fry. Additionally, he claims Optimus was very close with Fry. Optimus laughs and steers the conversation in a different direction. Returning from drinking, Edgar is scolded by Hitchcock for walking outside of curfew. At night, Augustus is awoken by his daughter, Mathilde, scraping the dirt of her fabric. However, as he tearfully approaches her, he realizes she is just a vision. Augustus breaks down in tears as he is plagued by memories of Mathilde. In Fry's morning burial, Fry's mother approaches Augustus. She gives him Fry's diary, going back 3 years. Confused about the existence of a journal, Augustus learns that Ballinger sent it to Fry's mother after Fry's death. Strangely, the diary only contains numbers and letters. Later, Augustus meets with the doctor and his wife, Julia. Julia learns that Augustus' wife died 2 years ago and offers her condolences. At Optimus' party, Edgar converses with Leia, Optimus' piano prodigy sister. She shows a certain distaste for her brother and his friends but seems to like Edgar. Edgar asks her to meet in the cemetery on Sunday, piquing her interest. Ballinger sees this interaction. Augustus manages to extract the message from Fry's diary. Meanwhile, Edgar charms Leia with morbidity, God, and death. Leia reveals Optimus is interested in immortality. Suddenly, Leia coughs and suffers a seizure. Edgar panics, but Leia soon recovers and tells him it is common. During their walk, Leia thanks Edgar for finding her, a sort of shred of optimism. Later, as Edgar walks alone in the misty forest, he gets attacked by Ballinger. However, Augustus kicks him off, scaring him away. Edgar airs out his frustration to Augustus on how everyone underestimates him, everyone except his mother. Eventually, he thanks Augustus for the help and promises to write a poem that shall immortalize the grumpy detective. Soon, Augustus sets his sights on Optimus. However, Hitchcock arrives to tell Augustus that Ballinger has gone missing. The cadets look for him through the forest and eventually find him bloodied and hanging by the cliff. The doctor examines Ballinger and concludes that the removal of his heart wasn't as neatly done as Fry's. However, Marquis also reveals that Ballinger was castrated. Thea bursts at Augustus because he believes they are nowhere closer to the culprit. The two commanding officers suggest Edgar could be connected to this, as he argued with Fry last summer. This surprises Augustus, who casually tells them to arrest Edgar if that's what they believe. Walking out, Hitchcock accuses Augustus of harboring ill feelings toward the academy. Augustus confirms this, believing they are fencing young men with rules and regulations, making them less human. Eventually, Augustus blames the institution for causing these deaths. Later, Augustus interrogates him about his connection with Fry, seeing that anyone crossing Edgar seems dead and violated. However, Edgar claims that the corps of cadets would have been reduced to a mere dozen if he were to kill everyone who made fun of him. Edgar insists he isn't a murderer, and Augustus believes him. However, he promises never to help Edgar if he lies again. Later, Edgar and Augustus dine with the Marquis. Eventually, it becomes a tense conversation as Optimus begins passive-aggressively, implying that Augustus ruffled through his belongings in the barracks. Julia cries and walks out after breaking her plates. Leia leaves too. The doctor apologizes and invites Augustus to his study, leaving Edgar and Optimus alone. Augustus inquires if Leia is unwell. Impressed with his observational skills, the doctor explains Leia is struck with an unknown illness that causes her unpredictable seizures. Suddenly, Optimus invites them into the living room as Leia plays the piano. Meanwhile, Augustus secretly explores the house. He sees a mysterious book in the doctor's library. Soon, he discovers a room. After Leia plays, Edgar confesses his feelings, telling Leia he'll do anything for her. Augustus discovers the uniform without flags, but he is interrupted by Julia, who seems fine now. Augustus tells Julia that he and the doctor are looking for it. The doctor reveals it's his late brother's coat. The doctor asks Augustus to explain why he has it, but the detective deflects the question to Optimus. Suddenly, Hitchcock goes to report that another cadet is missing. The following day, Augustus reveals that Stoddard's trunk has no civilian clothes, indicating he may have run off. Augustus explains that according to Fry's diary, Ballinger and Stoddard were good mates with Fry. Fearing he might be next, Stoddard ran away. The two officers ask Augustus about Optimus' involvement in the case. However, Augustus claims there are no grounds for arrest, and he's still exploring one final angle. Still, Thayer insists that he must report to the president they found the culprit. Later, Edgar arrives at Les' house. Meanwhile, Augustus arrives at Pepper's house and asks about Henry Leclerc, the witch hunter. Pepe reveals Leclerc was a priest burned at the stake. Edgar recites a poem to Leia, citing it arrived in his sleep. In the poem, Edgar states that Leia had pale blue eyes. However, Edgar says the poem speaks to them, prompting Leia to ask about Edgar's previous promise that he'd do anything for her. Peppy shows Augustus an image of Henry Leclerc, similar to the one he saw at Marquis' house. Augustus arrives and tells the doctor that Leia has seizures because she's being commanded by Henry. The doctor is still confused. So Augustus pulls out Leclerc's rare book in front of the doctor, still in denial. The doctor gets screamed at by Augustus, asking if his daughter speaks with the dead. Eventually, the doctor explains that Leia suddenly came to him, telling him she met her great-great-grandfather. He explains that Henry wasn't evil, just misunderstood. Meanwhile, Edgar lays lifeless on a platform, his hand bleeding. As Optimus and Leia cite incantations around him, the doctor explains his children swore that Fry was already dead. He reasons his art has failed him, so he lets Leia find the cure elsewhere. Augustus tells the doctor that someone has to be punished for the crime. He then asks where Optimus and Lo are. The doctor reveals they were there a while ago with Edgar, prompting Augustus to run out the door. Edgar awakens, not knowing what's happening. Leia and Optimus begin to mark his chest with blood. Leia tells him that sacrifice is the ultimate expression of love. She tells him he's the one she needs to be free. As Optimus puts the knife at Edgar's throat, Augustus arrives and tries to stop the ceremony. In her panic, Leia knocks out the candle, causing a fire. Optimus points a knife at Augustus, but he attempts to disarm the young cadet. The two scuffle while Leia attempts to finish the ceremony. However, because of the fire, the wood falls on Leia, knocking her out. While Optimus and Julia help Leia, Augustus takes Edgar away. Augustus saves Julia while Optimus and Leia get crushed by the collapsing wood beams. Edgar yells for Leia as the fire becomes larger. The following day, Augustus leaves Edgar to recover from the hospital. He talks with Hitchcock and learns that Julia continues to mourn and is pardoned by the magistrate. Meanwhile, the doctor submitted his resignation. As Augustus leaves, Hitchcock apologizes for doubting the good detective's competence. He walks with Thea, who regrets fraternizing with the Marquis. Pleased with the conclusions of the case, Thea releases Augustus from their contract. Augustus hopes that the senators in Washington will lay off the academy. The two men shake hands. As Augustus returns to normal life, Edgar visits him and claims he knows about his daughter. Edgar explains that everything came at him in his sleep. Comparing the partial note with Augustus' other note, Edgar concludes the detective corresponded with Fry. He continues that he bumped into Patsy, who told the whole story. When Mathilde left the academy ball, she was violated by 3 cadets and left for dead in the cold. Augustus found her the following day. Eventually, Mathilde lost her mind and offed herself by jumping off a cliff. Even though Augustus begged her to stay, Edgar asks Augustus why he never shared the story. Augustus tells him it's not a story he enjoys retelling. However, Edgar argues he could have helped him like how Augustus helped. Edgar continues that through his examination, he concludes Augustus offed Fry the man who violated his daughter. Edgar reveals that Augustus escaped back into his cottage, only to be summoned back to investigate the same crime he had committed. Edgar claims Optimus and Leia will forever go down as murderers. Upset, Edgar claims he's the prize fool. However, Augustus claims he was to deliver himself to Edgar all along. Edgar asks how Augustus knew it was Fry who violated Mathilde. Augustus reveals he has Fry's amulet, taken by Mathilde during the incident. He also confesses he's the one who offed the cows, sheep, and Ballinger. From Fry's diary, Augustus learns that Ballinger is involved. He also tells Edgar that Ballinger confessed as he beat him, incriminating Stoddard. Edgar claims Stoddard was the only one who escaped Augustus, adding that Fry and Ballinger could have just been sent to Thea. However, Augustus tells him he wants the 2 men to die. Edgar asks what now, and Augustus tells him it's up to him as he drinks a shot of liquor. Edgar reveals a pair of notes that will send Augustus to the authorities. Augustus gives him a confession note for the crimes. Edgar takes it and walks away. However, Edgar burns the letter instead. Before Edgar leaves, Augustus tells him he often wishes Mathilde run into Edgar during the ball. They could have been a family, Augustus tearfully claims. Edgar breathes sharply and almost tearfully tells Augustus something, but he stops himself. Then he says goodbye and leaves. Augustus walks through the snow, returning to the cliff where Mathilde jumped, clutching a piece of her dress. Augustus turns his back to the edge and lets the fabric go. He whispers under his breath, telling Mathilde to rest.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.